One of the biggest questions that we get about sourdough is, what do I do if I fed my starter and then nothing happened? Like, what do I do next? Do I just throw it away? Is it dead? So this whole video is all about that. So if your starter is very, very young, it's under 6 months old, sometimes it just needs multiple feedings. So don't give up on your starter. The longer that your starter has been dormant, let's say it's been in the fridge for months, the more feedings it is going to take in order to really get it activated. So give yourself time to do some multiple feedings, and I'm going to show you exactly what to do. Also, you don't need to remember all of the ratios as we dive into it. It's all down in the description below.
If your starter has been dormant in the fridge, it probably has some liquid on the top. There's nothing wrong with that liquid. It's called hooch, and you can actually just stir it right back in. The only time you don't want to keep your starter is if that hooch or your starter has turned green, pink, or it has mold on it. That's when you know you got to start over. But mine has just been dormant in the fridge for a few weeks, so I stir it right back up, and then we're going to get a clean, empty jar. This is a pint-sized, wide-mouth jar, and I'm making sure that my scale is set to grams. You also want to hit the tare button. The reason we do the tare button is because it cancels out all of the weight on the scale. Now we're going to take just 15 grams of starter from your main jar. Now, we only want to do a very small amount because right now we're just trying to get it to wake up, so we don't want to do a huge feeding and waste a bunch of flour. Then we're going to add in 15 grams of water. You're just doing the same amount of each element, and this is called a 1:1:1 ratio. Once you get the water in with your starter, go ahead and stir that up first. This makes it a little bit easier for the flour to get incorporated and you won't get as many clumps. Then we're going to do 15 grams of flour into our jar, give it a stir, and then this is the trick. We want to make sure that this jar, we're only going to put the lid on just lightly. We're not going to screw it down really hard. And we want this jar to sit somewhere where it's going to stay consistently between 65 to 70 degrees. If your house is cold right now, you can put it in your oven and only turn the light on. You could put it in the microwave above your oven. Turn the light on under the microwave. That warms the microwave up inside amazingly. Some people will wrap it with a warm towel, or they'll put it on like a heating pad. But the goal is that this starter sits somewhere where it's going to stay this consistent warm temperature. That warm temperature helps the sourdough bacteria, that live yeast that's in there, it helps it to wake up. If it's too cold, it won't be able to wake up. It keeps it dormant when it is cold. So make sure that you have this somewhere where it is going to stay warm. Then we're going to set our timer for 4 hours. In 4 hours, you should see some bubbles, some rise. It's okay if it doesn't double in size, but we should see some activity. Now, I do like to scrape the sides of my jar before I set it to rise so that all of that goodness is tucked in together. Now, here's the part where we get the biggest question is, my starter sat for 4 hours. I came back and I checked it, and it is literally doing nothing. It's just sitting there like a lump of, it just looks like it did when we first started. Okay. This is where the trick is. It's okay. It probably means that your starter needs another feeding. It might just not have gotten fully awake yet to really activate it. And that's why we are going to completely repeat the first feeding. So here's our jar. We're looking at it. So sad. No bubbles, no rise. Nothing happened. It's okay, friend. Your sourdough is not dead. It just needs another boost. It needs more time to wake up, and that's okay. So what we're gonna do is clean jar, and this time I just have like a 1/2 pint jar. We're just keeping with the small jars until we see that our starter is activated and it's rising. And we're gonna repeat that first feeding. We're taking 15 grams out of what we fed. Even though it didn't rise, it didn't give us all those lovely bubbles, it's okay. The sourdough sourdough is still in there. It's going to do what we want it to do, but we need to feed it again. So 15 grams of starter, then we're gonna do 15 grams of water and 15 grams of flour. Now, the reason why we're doing these smaller ratios, which is the 1 to 1 to 1, is number one, we don't want to waste a bunch of flour right now while we're just trying to get the starter to wake up. Number two, when your starter has a smaller amount of flour and water to work through, it's easier to see that it's activating because it goes faster. When you do the bigger ratios, like a 1 to 3 to 3 or a 1 to 4 to 4, it takes longer to activate it because it's a larger amount of water and flour that your starter is working through. So we go with the smaller ratios because it activates faster. Now, typically, this second feeding is going to wake up your starter and you're going to see the bubble and the rise. If it doesn't bubble and rise, then you're going to keep repeating this until it does. But here's the trick. Don't get rid of any of the starter that you're feeding. Our first jar with that pale lid, we don't want to throw this away. What's in this jar is actually considered discard because we didn't use it in the feeding and we're not using it yet in a recipe. And guess what? You can add this straight back into your main starter jar. It's actually going to work like a little bit of a feeding to that main jar. It's going to give that sourdough starter a little something to gobble up. It's going to help it to stay stronger, and it's replenishing it so that you have more the next time that you want to go and bake. So add it back in, stir it up, pop it into your fridge.
Yay, it has doubled. As soon as yours does this, you're ready to build your starter so you can bake. And this is why I don't suggest that people feed big batches of their starter and do big, huge feedings until you see your starter double and until you see all of those good bubbles going on in there. Now we're ready to do a big feeding so that we can have enough starter to make a big batch of bread. We can make English muffins or focaccia bread or babka or cinnamon rolls, whatever it is that you're hoping to make. So I'm going to show you how I do the next step of the feeding. And when I do this next step, this is a much bigger amount. We're going to use a bigger jar. And I like to do it in the evening so that it can rest all night long. And then tomorrow morning, my starter will be big. I'll have several hundred grams of starter to work with. And then we will make some dough.
Now we have our activated starter. It's fluffy, it's bubbly, ready to go. And what we're gonna do is we're getting a large quart-sized jar, clean, onto our scale, and we're gonna take all of the starter out of that smaller jar. Everything that you woke up, put it into the quart-sized jar. Now, the reason why we're using a bigger jar is because this is going to rise and it would overflow a small little pint-sized jar. So we're starting with 45 grams of active starter or leaven, and I actually put water back into that first jar that we used because it's just getting more of that sourdough goodness out of there. And then we're adding 180 grams of water, which is 4 times the amount of the starter that we started with. Okay, then give that a stir. And yes, okay, sometimes it ends up being a little bit more than 180 grams. It's okay. Your sourdough starter is now strong enough. It can handle if it's a little bit more than like exactly 4 times. Then we're going to put in 180 grams of our flour and we're going to get that stirred up. And this starter, now what you've done is you have a smaller amount of fed starter that is activating a larger amount of water and flour, which means it's going to need to rest for like 10 to 12 hours to fully hit its highest rise. So this is why I like to do the feeding in the evening, or I do it first thing in the morning. Basically, here's why. Because I either want to mix the dough up in the morning or I want to mix the dough up in the evening. I don't want this to be ready to work with when I'm in the middle of my workday or out running errands. So you decide when is the best time for you to feed yours, and just know that this is going to rest now for a long time, 10 to 12 hours. But the same rule applies, that it needs to be in a place that is around 65 to 70 degrees. Don't put your lid on really tight. You want the air and the gas to be able to escape freely out of there. And it's just going to rest until you are now going to be ready to mix up a big batch of dough. Once the starter has risen, you're going to have around 400 grams of fed starter or leaven to work with, which is enough to make a double batch of our everyday dough plus some other goodness. I'm putting the links to all of the recipes, how-to videos down below.
So we're glad that you're here in the kitchen with us, and we hope that you go and next make a big batch of dough so that you can make some delicious bread and start with focaccia or a sandwich loaf. Those are the easiest breads to start with when you first start doing anything with your sourdough starter. Don't go and try to make the rustic shaped loaf first. First, you want to just get used to working with sourdough dough, which is very different than working with yeasted dough. It's a new adventure, and we're glad that you're here.